I never imagined I would end up owning a significant portion of an entire suburban development, but sometimes life has a way of steering you in unexpected directions. My name is Eric Thompson, and 2 years ago, I purchased what I thought would be my dream home in Maplewood Estates, a charming neighborhood with meticulously maintained lawns and picturesque streets. What I didn't anticipate was Olivia Whitman, the president of our HOA, Homeowners Association, for those unfamiliar with suburban bureaucracy. My first encounter with Olivia happened just 3 days after I moved in. I was in the middle of unpacking when an assertive knock rattled my front door. Standing there was a middle-aged woman with an immaculately styled blonde bob, clutching a 3-ring binder labeled Maplewood Estates HOA regulations with color-coded tabs. Her voice was clipped and authoritative. "Hello, I'm Olivia Whitman, president of the Maplewood Estates Homeowners Association. I noticed your garage door was open for more than 30 minutes today. According to Section 4, Paragraph 3 of our bylaws, garage doors must remain closed unless actively in use." I blinked, still exhausted from moving. "I'm Eric. Nice to meet you, too. I was just bringing in boxes." She pursed her lips, clearly unimpressed. "Rules are rules. Consider this your first verbal warning." Without waiting for a response, she turned on her heel and marched across my lawn, pausing only to scribble something in her binder. I had no idea that this was merely the beginning of what I would come to call the Olivia saga. Over the next few months, I received an onslaught of violations. My grass was allegedly half an inch too tall. My trash cans were placed outside at 6:58 p.m. instead of after 7 p.m. My brother visited for the weekend, and having 3 cars in my driveway apparently violated the 2-car limit. But my favorite? I was cited for installing solar-powered garden lights that weren't the approved shade of black. I attempted reasoning with her. I attended HOA meetings, even joined the landscaping committee to build goodwill. None of it worked. If anything, my increased visibility seemed to paint an even larger target on my back. The situation escalated when I decided to repaint my house. I selected a warm beige from the approved color palette, hired a licensed contractor, and ensured every regulation was followed. I submitted all the necessary paperwork and received written approval from the architectural committee. But 3 days into the project, while I was at work, my phone exploded with notifications. Neighbors were texting me that Olivia had ordered the painters to stop immediately and had even called the police, claiming unauthorized construction. I rushed home to find 2 bewildered officers, an exasperated painting crew, and Olivia standing triumphantly in my driveway. "The shade you're using is desert sand, but your approval was for coastal beige. This is a clear violation," she announced. "I've filed for an emergency injunction." I pulled out my approval documents. "It's the exact color code that was approved. Here's the documentation, with your signature." She dismissed it with a wave. "The committee has determined that in natural light, it appears different than on the sample. You'll need to reapply for approval with a new color." The officers, clearly uncomfortable being dragged into an HOA dispute, suggested this was a civil matter and left. My painting crew, who had already purchased the materials, had no choice but to pack up, leaving me with a half-painted house and a bill for a wasted day's labor. That night, I did something I hadn't done since college. I pulled an all-nighter studying legal documents. I combed through our HOA bylaws more thoroughly than I had ever studied any legal contract. That's when I discovered that emergency injunctions require documentation of immediate harm to the community, something a disputed shade of beige hardly qualified for. I also found that the HOA board could not overrule the architectural committee's approval without a formal appeal process, which hadn't happened. The next morning, I sent an email to the entire HOA board, carefully citing the bylaws. I attached photos of 5 other homes in the neighborhood painted in indistinguishable shades of beige and CC'd every homeowner on our community email list. By that afternoon, I received an email stating that upon further review, my project could proceed. I naively thought this victory might ease tensions. Instead, it only made Olivia more determined. 2 weeks later, I received a certified letter claiming I was running a business out of my home, violating residential zoning laws. The HOA was initiating eviction proceedings. Her evidence? I occasionally took work calls on my front porch, and my home office was visible through my window. As a remote software developer, perfectly legal and increasingly common, this accusation was both absurd and infuriating. At the next HOA meeting, I confronted her. She smirked. Perhaps if you can't follow simple rules, this neighborhood isn't right for you. I hear the apartments across town are quite flexible with their standards. Something inside me snapped, not in an unhinged way, but with a calm, crystal-clear realization that I needed a solution as excessive as Olivia's abuse of power. If she wanted to play hardball, I could play too. What she didn't know about me was that my software development job was actually my role as CTO of a recently acquired tech company, leaving me with significantly more financial resources than she would expect. The next morning, I called my financial advisor. Janet, is it feasible for me to purchase multiple properties in my neighborhood? Potentially a significant percentage of the development? After crunching numbers, she confirmed that not only was it possible, but it might even be a sound investment. Property values were rising, and there were several rental opportunities. I began quietly purchasing homes under an LLC, selecting tenants who were briefed about the HOA situation. As fate would have it, one of my first tenants was a real estate attorney. Meanwhile, Olivia pushed forward with eviction proceedings. I arrived with my attorney, armed with zoning ordinances, statement from neighbors confirming I wasn't disruptive, and legal precedents. The board, except for Olivia, looked increasingly uneasy. The motion failed with only her vote in favor. Her face turned a shade of red not found on any HOA-approved color palette. Nearly shouting, she hissed, "This isn't over. Your hedges are uneven. Your holiday decorations stayed up 2 days past the deadline. I measured your grass at 5.7 inches last Tuesday." Over the next 6 months, I continued my acquisitions. Olivia issued 14 more violations, each more trivial than the last. She targeted my tenants as well. One was cited for a basketball hoop, another because their toddler's chalk drawings were labeled graffiti. But the turning point came when she attempted to push through a $2,000 special assessment per household without proper notice or voting. My attorney confirmed it violated state law. That's when I put the final phase of my plan into action. By this time, I owned 43% of the neighborhood. I formed a coalition with other frustrated homeowners, securing an additional 23%, a majority. At the special election meeting, Olivia arrived smug, until she saw the unexpected turnout. I presented evidence of financial mismanagement, procedural violations, and abuse of power. Then my attorney revealed the bombshell. I had controlling interest and was exercising my right to dissolve the HOA. Her face drained of color. "You can't do that," she shrieked. My attorney calmly explained that we could, and had. The vote was held. The HOA was dissolved. As the results were announced, Olivia clutched her binder, her knuckles white. Then my attorney added, "Also, authorities are investigating the $78,000 of HOA funds misappropriated to companies owned by your family." At that moment, 2 officers entered the room. "Olivia Whitman, we need you to come with us." As they escorted her out, her precious binder slipped from her fingers, its pages scattering, her reign of petty tyranny finally over.